Hello and welcome to today's technology workshop from D-Link for Business, covering our range of business grade routers. Today's webinar is the second in a two-part technology workshop covering the range of our business grade routers. Today's webinar, it is going to be recorded, so if you're watching live, welcome. It's great to have your company today. If you're joining us via our YouTube channel, it's great to have your attention here as well. We will be answering questions during today's session, so if you do have some questions that come up in the Zoom Q&A box that's on the panel at the bottom of your screen, please type your questions in there and we will do our very best to get to all of those questions, and we'll do our best to answer all of those questions during today's session as well. If you are watching live and you did want to catch up via YouTube, or you've seen this via a share, you can find all of the webinars that we've run over the last 6 months on our YouTube channel. Just simply go to YouTube, search for D-Link Australia or D-Link New Zealand, then go to playlists and select webinars, and you'll find a whole range of webinars covering key technology areas such as industrial switches, 4G and 5G modems, along with some technology workshops which we've run covering things like wireless, switching, and of course today on routing. With no further ado, I'd like to welcome David Urbano to today's session. David will be taking us through today's session. David, tell us a little bit about what we're going to be covering in today's session.
Thanks, Phil. So today we will be looking at routing, the second part of our technology workshops. Remember that the first part was done by my colleague Aaron Bilton, and we touched some stuff regarding IP routing, public IP addresses, private IP addresses. We're going to do that as well a little bit, but we're also going to get more knowledge into VLANs, how the router can handle the VLANs, how can we do VPNs, something that nowadays it's probably a must for every company, site-to-site VPN or client-to-site VPN. But at the same time, we're going to talk about backup failover. So we prepare actually a lab where we're going to show you how can we do backup failover when the main internet connection fails? What are the solutions that we have that you can use currently? So this is the routing part. This is the agenda for today. Without further ado, let's just get into it. So first of all, we're going to talk about NAT and how NAT affects our services. So how does it work? Especially when we have so many services out there that can do public IP addresses or private IP addresses to give us internet, right? With the depletion of the IPv4, we no longer cannot use public IP addresses on our services. So that's why NAT comes to play and help us to do not even that, but also help us to share with one public IP addresses the service of the internet to all of our computers. So we're going to go to that. We're going to tell you how it works. Very simple, very probably for many of you, this is a very easy topic probably, but it's good to have a refresh on how this works and how can we help to solve problems when we have double NATing, when we have a mobile network that normally uses a non-public IP address or a public IP address, but is double NATed. We're going to go and show you how to do a bridge mode, very simple as well. Many of the routers that we have, let's say in the cable space or HFC space, we don't produce nothing like it. So the idea is that you can bridge that cable modem and then use a different type of router that can serve as a firewall, like the DSR series that we're going to show you today. So that's something that we're going to talk about as well. At the same time, if happens that you have two internet services, which is very common for our SMB partners, SMB customers, you can do load balancing. or you can use both services, or you can do a backup failover. So one of them will be served as a backup for the service. We're going to talk about DMZ, how this specific interface help us to open certain services to the internet, but keep us safe from our local side of the networks, or for whatever we want to be safe on. And then we're going to look at something very specific, NAT Loopback, traffic management, and VPNs. And then we're going to do the live demo. So let's jump into it. Let me just click next here. So the live demo basically will showing you DWM 312. Some of you might be familiar with that unit. I'll probably will show you how it looks like. It's a very robust industrial type of modem router with 4G and 3G on it. But we're going to talk about that a little bit further. And then we do the failover, traffic management as well, and VPN. Okay, side to side and client side.
Thanks for that, David. So before we get into the technical part of things, certainly what's a really key part of working with D-Link, and for lots of the people that are attending this webinar today, a lot of you are IT resellers, managed service providers. If you are not yet part of our D-Link Partner Rewards program, please, we'd certainly encourage you to go and sign up for that. There's the websites for those, dlink.com.au/rewards and .co.nz/rewards. Some upfront discounts that are available on product to IT resellers and MSPs, along with access to priority tech support, demo programs that are available, not for resale product, as well as an all-encompassing evaluation program, which is available as well. Of course, for achieving certain targets, there is rewards that are available to your business as well. So we'd certainly encourage you to sign up for that program. We have our distributors that you need to go and purchase our product from, which in Australia and in New Zealand, our product is available both from Ingram Micro and from Cinex, and in Australia only, we have Blue Chip Infotech, EdSys, Hills Multimedia Technology, and Pacific Datacom. So undoubtedly, you've got a trading account with at least one of those distributors. Back to you, David.
Thanks, Phil. So let's get into it. So let's start for NAT, or Network Address Translation. So how does it work? Typical setup, local network, and we want to go on the internet, right? So basically, let me just see, yeah. So basically what we get in our local network, probably from the part number one of our routing series, do you remember that we use private IP addresses? Everyone probably might know this. They are not routable through the internet. So even if you want to set yourself up with one of these pool of IP addresses, you won't get anywhere. The routers or the gateways are already pre-filtered with denying traffic from these private IP addresses. So we can only use them for local purposes, so only into our networks. So these are the range of IP addresses that we can use. The normal and the most common, well-known that we use everywhere, 192.168.0, right? Now, how do we route these public IP addresses to the internet? Well, we use the router to help us with it by using a network address translation. So what it does is basically it translates that private IP address into a public one. You can have a pool of public IP addresses, but at the same time, you will be sharing that IP address with all of your clients that are local. So this is the example, basically. Locally, we have a range of 10 local network addresses, but we're going to go out via one public IP address. Now, how do we do that? How do we share that public IP address? The answer is very simple, via port numbers, right? So every single public IP address, private address will be NATed, or we will translate into the router, and it will be assigned a port number. This will depend on your operating system. You can apply a random one. It will depend also if you have statically assigned port numbers on your router. So when the traffic comes back, let's say you are remoting back into an IP camera, for example, you know exactly the port that you had set up on, okay? So that's the idea. It's a very rough idea, of course, but this is just to tell you how NAT works. So it's just basically translating the private IP address into the public IP address. Now, this is very common when we use different services, NBN, ADSL, etc., VDSL, that we get a modem from our ISP provider. And what it does is it basically change or modifies our internal network. If we can log into that modem, we will have what we call double NATing. So the modem pre-configured with a standard 192.168.0, for example, and our local network existing, it might have something else. You might have 10 dot blah, blah, or 192.168, something completely different from the modem or that new router. So the internet will work anyway, because between the routers, they will talk and they will know from what interface they connect into it. But you will be doing double NATing, meaning that the local network will have an IP address between your existing router and the new router or modem. There will be another local IP address, and then you will have your public IP address. That works, the internet works, but it is a bit of a pain when we want to do things like, for example, remote into our network by probably checking an IP camera. If we want to do port forwarding, we will have to also deal with which router will do what. So it's not ideal at all. The best thing we can do is definitely to avoid the double NATing. Some applications like VPN won't work, because when you set a VPN, and that's something that I will show you later on, you need to fix the local network, the local private network that you use, plus the remote end of each devices. Or if you come in by a client VPN, you will need also to know what's the local the endpoint of the local network. So in double NATing, that's going to be very tricky to do. So the idea is that, and I do understand that not all of us might have access to the actual modem that comes from the ISP. Sometimes they are managed by their services, their service providers. But the idea is either to change it, there is no other way, or to ask requests for access to it. So what we can do in that case is removing the double NAT by bridging that specific device. So what the bridging does, and that's something I'll show you live, is basically it forwards or passes all the public IP address into the router that I want. In this case, I have a router, as you can see here, and a modem that I set up as a bridge mode, and all the public IP address will go directly into the one side of the router, right? So we don't have to deal with the modem. We don't have to deal with whatever the modem has. It's just basically doing a physical transformation. Normally what we see is that we come physically with a specific interface, like RJ45 for the telephone, and then the modem serves us just to change that to an Ethernet port, right? basically that's what we use the bridge modem for. So now that we have all the public IP address into my main router, which normally is a firewall, now I can play with it. I can do everything. I can do my port forwarding. I can do things like remote back into my network without worrying about the modem, right? The ISP modem, like in this case. Now, there are different modes that you can bridge. It's not just by selecting one option, at least not in our series of routers. You can bridge basically in two ways, either classical, which is whatever comes from the WAN, it would translate into the LAN, or you can do a transparent bridge, which serves for certain purposes. If you have different networks, if you have more than one router, you don't want to change the IP addresses, you don't want to translate that IP addresses, you just want to get directly into whatever is on the LAN, you will use transparent mode, which means that wherever it goes to the WAN, it goes straight to the LAN without translation. Okay, that's something to think about. I haven't seen many clients doing it, but some of them, it's a feature request. So that's the two options that you have for bridging mode. How is done in the modem, or normally on any of the modems that you might receive? You just go into the actual setting. Generally speaking, sometimes happens that by just selecting the bridge mode, you will disable DHCP on the router, which is something that probably you need to take in account. You can have two DHCP servers running on your network, right? In my previous example, if we have a look here, when you get the modem from your ISP, normally it comes with DHCP server on, right? So whatever you plug in, you will get an IP address. If we do the bridge mode, we don't want that, because we want the router, our main router, to serve as the main DHCP router. So either we disable the DHCP server, or we make sure that when we select bridge, the DHCP server is off in that specific modem that we want to change. Also, have a look at the wireless, whether the wireless is going to be disabled. Also helps a lot, because the wireless will come up exactly as the Ethernet physical interface is going to give us an IP address, so we don't want that. Better we disable it. Now remember that our DSR series models, they do have wireless on them as well, so we might not need the wireless from the actual modem. On the DWM312, which is our 4G LTE modem router, this is the way to do it. If you have worked with us, or if you haven't, you might see that we have different guides on our website that which we have partnered with different firewall vendors. So if you have, as we expect, to have your own firewall, and then you want to use this unit as a backup failover, there is an actually setup guide for all of that. I can show you that probably later on, or we can send you more information about it on how to do this configuration, which is not quite complicated, but you just need to know exactly where to click on. That's all. So, and that's also what I'm going to show you today. We're going to have a DSR router as a main router, and then the DWM312 as a backup failover. This is the way to configure it. We just disable the keep alive, so the one is not constantly asking for traffic, and we just bridge, select as device mode as a bridge. That's basically it. Now, moving towards the DSR router, or I might say it, a general router that you choose. Basically, you want two things. One, load balancing, and backup failover, right? Load balancing help us, especially if you have two internet services, of course, but if one of them is actually slower than the other. That's what I've seen a lot, and that helps immensely. That's one thing that you can do with this type of routers. Another thing is that you can set what protocols or what type of traffic goes to which interface. you can also do that. I'll show you that in a second. So load balancing, and when we set up load balancing, we have two types of algorithms that we can use or setups. One is round robin, and the other one is a spillover mode. There is a third one, but we don't use it anymore. The round robin one basically tells the traffic to use each of the interfaces every time that there is a request for connection. So the traffic will go from one interface, next request for connection, it go to the next interface, and so on and so forth. So it will vary constantly. That's definitely transparent for the client. However, there are applications like VPN, specifically like voice, that wouldn't like that. Definitely wouldn't like that, because they need just one set of point to work on. They can be change the traffic to different interfaces. So how do we do that? Or what's the option when we want to keep the traffic on one interface, but we still want the benefit of load balancing? What we can do is protocol binding, okay, which I'll show you as well how it works. So that's what we do when we use round robin load balancing. When we use load balancing with spillover, is slightly different. However, we set a specific bandwidth or threshold in the interface. So when that threshold is reached, it will spill over the next one. So I have my main interface. I set up parameters like load tolerance and max bandwidth. When that's being reached, because there is enough traffic going through, it will go into the next interface. Very clever. That's how it works. It depends, of course, on what you're doing. The most common one will be round robin, but there are many instances when you want to use the spillover configuration as well. So round robin, the traffic is just distributed between the two WAN ports. In this case, we have DSR 1000, DSR 500 AC. They have two WAN ports, okay? We don't have any other devices that uses 3. So the maximum we have is 2. Round robin mode, as I mentioned before, protocol binding will definitely help us when we want to keep the traffic just to attach the traffic to one specific interface. We don't want the traffic to go 1 and 2 to use the round robin mode, just one specific interface. And that's something predefined on our routers, okay? There are more stuff that you can do. There are more services that you can check. Probably I'll show you that as well. In terms of DMZ, another main feature, or probably main interface service that we can have on our routers, probably on any router, where we can expose certain services or servers into the internet directly without the need to expose our local network. So the demilitarized zone serves that purpose. Physically, you can have an interface in our routers, and you can assign a specific address to it that is completely different from your LAN or your WAN. So it's a great benefit, because everything that comes back to the internet, which is what you want, you just hit that specific IP address or local IP address, okay? Now, there are two ways that you might see this. One, which is DMZ physically, there is a physical port, you connect things up, or logical, which is done by our consumer routers, where you can select a DMZ. You can just enable the feature, but it still belongs to the same network. There is a little bit of traffic disruption there, like you can still segregate some traffic, but it's not 100% physical DMZ. But it's good to know that you have that. One feature more to show you for the NAT, when we do NATing and when we do certain configurations, like we want to have a device available not only for the outside world, but also for the inside world without using private or the actual number of the IP address is called NAT Loopback, right? Which is a feature that basically forwards the traffic for either the internet or the local LAN to a specific device that I want to make available. So with this feature, I can translate that instead of typing in my public IP address and a port number, even inside or outside, I just set up as a DNS resolution service. So whoever is on the outside is going to just jump into my camera, in this case, laptop or whatever I want to set up there, not by using my public IP address number, by using a URL, right? From the local side, it's going to be exactly the same. So the router is the one resolving that request, but you don't need to give access to the actual IP address of the camera. So that's basically hidden. Okay, of course, you will have your username and password to log into it. You will have your access control list, whatever, but you have at least a level of privacy here. Okay, which is good to know. Automatic failover, which is something also that I'm going to show you live using our DWM 312. Since we have two physical interfaces, well, we will use one as a primary internet connection, and we will use the second one as a backup. Okay. How we do that, and I'll show you how we can modify a little bit how they recover. There are certain parameters there, but they still obviously take some time when it goes from one to another. Not much. The ping doesn't disrupt for a long time, but I'll show you how it works. And it depends, of course, in the quality of the internet service and on the 4G service as well. I'll show you how that works. There are a couple of things that we can do when recovering from a fail of the internet services, like monitoring how the service is working. In this case, we can use DNS, which is just predefined on the actual router, or we can use our own IP address. So if I want, like in the last example, if I want to use any public service that is available, and that's my trigger for the failover to kick in, well, I can use that as well. So it's very flexible. I can use my own DNS, the one that is local. I can use the DNS that is public, or I can use my own IP address. Okay, and as you can see here, there are different settings that we can change. So it will be faster, slower, depending on the needs of the request of the client, of course. Traffic management, another great feature I think it was worth to tell you about, where we can prioritize and allocate bandwidth on the interfaces, not only the physical interfaces, not only the LAN interfaces, but also we can do this. We can do this if we have VLANs. Okay, so we can prioritize traffic. Normally, what we prioritize is voice. So yeah, we can do that here. Or a specific VLAN or a specific interface, or we can limit, right? If we have VLANs and we have guests, they are on the internet, we want to limit the bandwidth that they use, we can do it directly from the router. That's what the router is good for, right? We normally don't do that on the switch, which is normally a question that we get asked. We do that in the router, in the firewall. That's where you want to do this. At the back also of captive portal, at the back of any other settings, but the router is the one that can shape all this stuff. And it's very good to do it here because you have all the control, okay? Next up, VPN. So nowadays, and since all these restrictions happening and we are working from home, we want to get back into our networks, not physically, but virtually. So that's what we use VPN for, right? Virtual private networks. There are different flavors here. I'll show you, well, that's basically it. VPN, virtual private network. The type of solutions that we use, flavors of VPNs are one, remote access VPN, right? So I have a client offsite my network, my office, but I want them to connect back into it. How do I do that? Well, they will have to issue, first of all, an access control list. They will have some username and password, but I create for them a VPN. They will have to issue or launch a VPN client. After they do that, the client will call back into my headquarters, and then they will have access to whatever the resources I want them to have access to. So I can also restrict that. But it's like if they are basically local, right? They are on the internet, but there is a tunnel, a private tunnel that has been created between them. The good thing of this connection is pretty much available all the time and is on demand. Right, so I open my laptop, I connect, it call, I'm connected into my office. As soon as I close my laptop, I disconnect the service, I'm off the network. However, if, well, that's one option. The second option, which is with a permanent tunnel, is the site-to-site VPN, right? So I have my LAN WAN in this, well, my headquarters, probably this is the best way to, I'll come back to this one in a second. This is the best way to do it. Headquarters, my office, main office, and I create a permanent tunnel, right? In this permanent tunnel, regardless if I close or not my laptop, it's gonna keep running. So I can see traffic, I can manage the tunnel, I can manage my clients, I can do much more than just trying to connect and print something from my location. So that's the one we want when we have we want to interconnect different sites, physical sites over the internet, right? So we will connect two networks directly. So back to the types, VPN solutions, IPsec, site-to-site, that's the protocol that will be used to connect both sites. If I'm using a client, I will go either PPTP, which is unfortunately or fortunately no longer available, neither on Apple devices or Windows devices. I'll rather use L2TP or SSL. Both of them will work. They are all supported by our DSR routers. When if PPTP is not supported anymore, why will I use it? We have a lot of clients still using Windows 7, very old Windows versions that still support PPTP versions, right? Other protocols, L2TP, apart from L2TP, GRE and OpenVPN, where we allow the connection from the client, but issuing certificates, okay? This is all quite a big topic, but today we're going to show you site-to-site VPN, probably the main characteristics of the VPN. In this case, site-to-site VPN, as I mentioned before, I have my headquarters and I have my branch, my site B, okay? As long as I know the information of both sides, like the endpoint, so the public IP address that I'm talking to, and the local network that is on both sides. Pretty much that's all I need. What I'm going to show you in the live demo is how this is done, how it works. And one of the questions will be then, what happens if the VPN goes down? What do I do? Do I have a backup for a VPN? And the answer is yes, we do have a backup as a VPN service. Of course, you will have to have a second internet service, and that's also what I'm going to show you as well. And the configuration is basically this, which I'm going to go through very quickly. Remote endpoint. We need the public IP address of both sides. So this is, let's say on site B, I'm trying to connect to site A. There will be a pool of IP addresses. Well, it's actually not here, but they will be, I'll show you on the demo. They will be, when the clients are on the tunnel, there is a pool of IP addresses they use, right? Because you want to have more than one client on the tunnel. That you can define as well. It's not particularly necessary, like you really don't care much about it because it's just in the tunnel. But I'll show you how that works as well. But this is just the details you need. Remote IP addresses, so public IP addresses, local IP addresses, local, remote, and local IP, remote and local IP addresses, private IP addresses, sorry, and then a pre-share key, so a password, right? Which in this case, D-Link. We can leave from out of the box from the router, we can leave everything as it is. We just need to modify these parameters. And we have a guides for this also on our networks. If you want to go a little bit more into authentication, into encryption, that is also available. But just bear in mind that that's overhead for the VPN, right? So I think that I normally do or advise when doing these setups is to set it up in the most basic form possible. Then you see there is communication, so the internet works, blah, blah, blah. And then you start adding up whatever you want on top of it, either authentication, so very more stronger, or encryption, okay? So that's basically it. That's what we want to chat about. And then I'll show you the live demo. Okay. So for the live demo, let me, first of all, I need to change the screen. Let's see, how do we do this? This is going to be interesting. Okay, yeah, I'm going to show you first TWM312, right? This is how it looks like. I got it with me just here. This is the device that we're using for the demo, for the live demo. How to set up the bridge mode, right? I pre-configured a little bit, just instead of, normally it comes with SIM A and B. Remember that this unit can do 2 4G services. So you can have Telstra, Optus, Vodafone, whatever, okay? So even more, more redundancy. So what we do is device mode, we select bridge mode, but just be careful, make sure that you disable also the keep alive one, okay? Because we don't want that to keep checking whether the internet is available on the device, okay? Because this is not gonna be your main router anymore. It's gonna be the DSR in our case. So router mode, we disable the keep alive. Device mode, we select bridge mode and we apply. This unit here that I have, probably you saw that before. Yeah, it is, so you can see here, bridge mode. We're using an M2M public static IP address. That's very important. I think we talked about that previously in our previous webinar, just because if you don't have a static IP address, of course, you're not gonna get, you're gonna get a dynamic public IP address, right? What it means is if you set up a VPN service, in a week's time, the public IP address will change. And so your VPN will go down, then you'll need to find out which one is and then set it up again and so on and so forth. What's the least time for these services? Who knows? So it's better to ask for a public static IP address. So I just set it up now. Hopefully I don't get disconnected. So it is here on my second interface. There you go. So bridge mode, before we were getting 192.168.0.1, which is the default out of the box. When I set it up as bridge, that's exactly what happens. It just passes from the 4G card, the public IP address, it passes directly into my router, okay? Now this device, we're gonna use it. Actually, can you guys see this screen? Yeah, with the interfaces and stuff, yeah.
We can just see the home screen.
Ah, okay. Just where the 01 is.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So I might have to show you. Let me show you this quickly. Here we go. This one, right? So this one is just my internet service here. This one is the DSR, DWM312 that we just configured right now in breach mode. Okay, so it no longer, I can access it by 192.168.0.1. It just passes, that's what I was saying. The public IP address, the 4G public IP address is now on my device because it's on breach mode, right? So breach mode here, this is now what we want. So we're gonna use this device as a backup failover. Now, how am I gonna do this? It's gonna be very interesting. So currently we have set up, I'll show you, because physically I'm gonna remove this device from my side and we're gonna plug it in on a setup that we have prepared for you. So let me do the sharing of. Can you guys see? Yeah, you can see the screen. Perfect.
I mean, 90%.
Yep. I just need to move it across. Still can see this. Resume. Better. Yep, looks better. A little bit more. It's not gonna look nice, but I'll try my best to make it live demos, right? Who thought it would be so complicated? So what I have here is, yes. So what I have here is a DSR 1000 and a DSR 500, right? So what I want to do is the side-to-side VPN. That's all what I want to do. So here, 173. I also want to show, so let me just unplug this DWM312 from here. And then, just please. And then I'll show you from here. So DWC 1000, well, DWC 5000. So I have 5000 AC and I have 1000 AC. How am I able to see both? Because I'm remoting in using TeamViewer, and the TeamViewer, this PC is connected directly into one of the ports of my DSR, right? That's all. It's a DHCP service, is directly connected into the 500. Yeah. So DSR 10.10.100, that's what I set up as my local IP address. Okay. So if I go device, let me show you device. This is main office, 1000 AC, branch office, 500 AC. Okay. What I want to show you as well live. Let me see if I can do this. Give me one sec. 2173. Yep. Admin. What I want to show you is the actual setup that we just prepared for you guys here. Can you guys see the screen? I'll show you in a second. The camera probably just got moved. There we go. Thank you. I just moved the camera from here directly into our setup. So DSR 500 is down here, 1000 is here. It's flicking. I'll probably log in via Safari. Firefox doesn't like it much. But this is just to show you. We have breach mode, G225, DSL 526, I believe it's this one. And then DSR 1000 and DSR 500 AC. So let's go back here. You can see that, and then let's set up. Yep. So let's set up the DSRs that we have there. Okay. So on the 1000, currently we plug in. So this is the main. Yeah. So this is the main public IP address of my DSR. Correct. Here we have on the 1.2, we should have. Will come up at some point. We have the public of the DWM 312. It's just booting up at the moment, but I'll show you in a second. And we have the 500 here. So site-to-site VPN, let's start from there. So the first thing we do, and again, all of these can be seen on our website, all of these guides. Site-to-site VPN, I just have to add a new policy, and I just change the endpoint public IP address, which in this case is the 1000. The subnet that device, sorry, the subnet my local IP address is on, my network is on, so 10.10.100, as you can see here. And the remote local private IP address too, which is 192.168. So just in case, if I go LAN settings, you will see here, that's my local from the branch side or from the main side, right? That's basically it. I can leave, again, I can leave everything else as default. I don't really care much about that now, at least for this demo purpose. Pre-share key, I just set up as a secret key. I just type that in. Same here. We will have a look, policies, same. Same here, right? Same stuff, but from the other side. 58 is my other router, blah, 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 secret key. Okay, so when that's done, let me just save this. I can do two things on and checking if that's working. One, active VPN, right? Yes, it is working. There are some traffic going through. And the IPsec, which is the protocol that is being used, it is established, right? And I can see the same here, active VPN, blah, blah. Now, that's about the site-to-site VPN. So as you can see, it's established down here. Why do I have two? Because here on the 500, yeah, because here in the 500, I've set up my DWM 312, which got this IP address, right? So basically, when this one, first of all, when the main one goes down, right, and I have already an external or a secondary interface or service, what I can do is, remember that I mentioned load balancing, we can do that from here. So I can use either auto rollover, I can use load balancing, which is what we want, and I can use round robin or spillover mode. And then I can set up my configuration, right? Round robin is probably the way we want to go. And so if I disable or disconnect DWM212, this obviously will work out. The other thing is, when that happens, again, the VPN will go down, right? When the VPN will go down, and that's what I create a second policy on my site-to-site VPN, which is site-to-site VPN backup, right? Exactly the same parameters as the first one. I haven't changed or modified anything except for the local gateway, right? So the local gateway will be, we call the main one as dedicated one, or in this instance, in this VPN setup, is called dedicated one, or and the 1.2, sorry, as configurable one, because it could serve also as a DM set. So that's the only thing I change from the backup. So this one might be dedicated, and this one should be configurable. That's how it should be, right? Same in this place on the other side. So every time the internet service goes down, first of all, I make sure that the load balancing works. So both interfaces can still, or at least one still works, but also I make sure that the side-to-side VPN works. Now, probably one easy way to see if this is working, for those wondering, 10.1.110. So this is this side. Actually, this is a bit the opposite, but that's okay. If I ping from here, 192.168.10.1, yeah. The VPN is obviously up and running, right? Which is what we want. In this case, because the load balancing is enabled, the traffic will go round robin way. But this is how easily, it takes a little bit of time, but it's simple. It's just understanding, and I know if I know the right parameters from my sites, public IP address, local IP address, remote IP address, and I define a secret key or a password, that's basically what I need for selecting the site to set up and configure the site-to-site VPN. Okay. So yeah, that's basically it from the live demo. Questions? Happy to answer. As I say before, just I don't know why we can share more, but yeah, this is the live demo here. So 1000. Let me actually, because I guess it's flickering for all of you too. Right, let me just close this. Let's open this one. I'm not sharing anything, just give us 1 sec. Probably will show you this one. Yeah. Safari. There we go.
So David, it's and while we're doing this this demo, is a question that's come in from Les. How does the failover VPN go back when the primary VPN returns? Great question, Les.
Thanks, Les. So let me show you here then. Can I new share? I need to do new share for everything, right? Unless there is another way. So you can see DSRs here, right? Yep. Okay, cool. So as I mentioned before, yeah. So when you create a policy, there are different parameters that where you can do that. So if you see from the DSR itself, this is the main site-to-site VPN, okay? This is the main one. If I want to do a backup VPN, which is the second one down there, all I need to tell him is, first of all, detection period. So for how long, how many times, if the VPN is not running, is going to jump into the backup. But also, I need to enable who is going to be and what's the policy for the backup, which is this one. And here you have also a failback time to switch from backup to primary. So as soon as the backup is no longer needed, it will go back to the main one. Everything is defined here. There is a guide for this, I believe. Maybe not for this specific part, but since the question is asked, I will definitely update it. But it's just here. As soon as you do the VPN setup, enable the peer detection, and then you enable the redundant gateway. That's basically it.
So David, another question here from Zoltan. So there's a parameter in there with failback time. So the smallest number you can put in there is 30. Yeah. Is that fallback time in minutes, in seconds? What's it refer to?
Yeah, it's definitely seconds. It's just seconds. Basically, how many pings, right? Pings per second. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, there's a question here from Michael. With VPN security, is IKE version 1 now considered risky?
Yes. Yes, it is. It is actually risky. We support basically whatever is available at the moment, but again, for this purpose, let me show you from here. You can set up all the parameters you want, right? So you can even use IKE2, and not only that, but also you can even increase the algorithms that you want to use, as many bits as you want. Of course, some of these ones are no longer in use neither, like AS128, well, probably DS, definitely we wouldn't use that one. Low fish wouldn't use that one, things like that. It will go 256 and over. But again, just to set it up, let's go and start with something, and then we start increasing. But yeah, it's better to use IK2, correct. Yeah, I'll agree as well. All right, so basically that's what it is. That's what we wanted to show you today. Let me do sharing again, just to finish up the actual presentation, which I think you guys can see it. So if there is something else about VPNs, which I know is a broad topic and involves not only two routers and a DSR doing the backup failover, I know it involves a little bit more, especially with the size of the networks that we have to deal with. We haven't talked much about different services, like if I want to share resources, I want to let my clients, my users, to print, to access this device. There is a static IP address, etc. Look, we can go through all of that on a different webinar, but also please feel free to reach us out. Feel free to email us, feel free to give us a call, and we help you out as well to understand even more, but especially on how to configure these on our devices, okay? So that's it for me, I believe. But questions, welcome.
Great, thank you very much, David. There was one more question that did come in, which our colleague Ilya has kindly answered. So I'll just read out the question from Heath. Can LAN 2 and LAN 3 on different subnets communicate directly to each other utilizing the VPN from each site back to LAN 1? So for example, will traffic be routed at LAN 1 to either of the two sites, or would LAN 2 and LAN 3 require a separate VPN between them to communicate? Lots in there in that question, very, very detailed, but thankfully we've got Ilya on our team to help answer that. So yes, definitely possible to get LAN 2 and LAN 3 to communicate with each other via the VPN tunnel to the LAN 1. So that would be a hub and spoke VPN. So great question, Heath. Certainly had Ilya thinking about that for a little bit. So a question's come in from another comment here from Michael. It'd be great to have some recommendations regarding IKE v2 and encryption. So we'll come back to you on that one. Michael, if you could just drop your perhaps drop an email address or a phone number into the chat box, that'd be great. And question here from Mark. Yes, there will be a link that we will send out with a copy of this recording. Of course, that will be up on our YouTube channel as well. So search D-Link Australia or D-Link New Zealand on YouTube, select playlists and webinars, and you'll find routing 1 and Routing 2 webinars on there. We expect that link to be ready to go by the end of today. So yeah, it's certainly been lots of people that have been clicking on those. Nathan's just put a comment through here. Yes, Nathan, we'll get David to give you a call at the end of the session. Great to have you joining in. Glad you've been able to help out your customer today. Okay, so as is usual with the custom, at the conclusion of our webinar, everyone will be sent an email with a survey. That's great feedback from people, and certainly a number of those things that we've heard back from we have implemented. So thank you very much, everybody for that. You will, upon completing that survey, you'll get a coupon code. Take you to the D-Link web store, where you can go and get some great pricing on our range of routers as well. So our fixed line routers, the DSR 250N, 500 AC, 1 and 1000 AC, all of which are coming with a bonus DSL G225, a VDSL modem, which of course you need to go put that router into bridge mode, which of course we've all learned about that today. And we've also got a special offer on our DWM312 4G router as well, which is really useful as a standalone router if you don't have a fixed line connection coming in, or being used as a failover product as well. Certainly a lot of our partners today which are using the DWM312 for that. Okay, so please keep an eye out for that. Again, if you are not yet a D-Link for Business Rewards partner, we'd certainly encourage you to sign up for that program, dlink.com.au/rewards or dlink.co.nz/rewards. And of course, all of our products are available from our distribution partners in both Australia and New Zealand. In New Zealand, we have Ingram Micro and Cenex. Of course, those two distributors in Australia, along with Civic Datacom, Multimedia Technology, Hills, EdSys, and Blue Chip. So hopefully you are dealing with one of those people. Of course, we've got a great account management team and technical support team to be able to support you and to support your customers as well. Based up in Brisbane, looking after Queensland and Northern Territory, have Bernie Reisenberger. We in Sydney, looking after New South Wales and the ACT, we have Michael Crocombe. And down in Melbourne, looking after Victoria, Tasmania, South Australia, and Western Australia, we have Colin Chamberlain. Ably supporting all of those account managers or our channel managers are David Urbano, who supports both Bernie and Michael. We've heard from David today. Great presentation today, David. Thanks so much for sharing all of that information and for organising that demonstration as well. And in addition to that, looking after Colin, working with Colin is Aaron Bilton. Over in New Zealand, we have Paul Batchelor, our regional sales manager, who does a great job of getting all around the country with restrictions now lifted, that Paul is able to get around the place. No doubt some of you have been speaking with Paul and may have even had a visit from him. Paul is based in Wellington, but of course is able to get around New Zealand. And of course, we've got our partner priority support team, which you can access on 1300 558 053 in Australia and 0800 354 656. That goes directly to our level 2 and level 3 support team, of which you saw on David's camera, you saw a tiny little bit of their selection or their portion of the D-Link support office here in Sydney, Australia. So a couple more questions which have come through, which we will take. Those. Question here from Mark. With the DWM312, is there a 12-volt option for it for mobile use? I'm assuming you're referring to being able to either plug it into a car power socket, or being able to put that off a DC battery. We'll have to come back to you on that one. It's not something that we have specifically available for that information at hand right now, but we'll come back to you. We'll come back to you on that one. We do have an interesting adapter available for that particular product to power that device via Power over Ethernet, a DPE-301GS. It is that's a power adapter which is powered via Power over Ethernet, and it then goes and splits that that power setting. So one is just for data only, and there's then a 5-volt DC connector which comes out of that, which has the appropriate connector to connect into the DWM312. So as a solution where you're unable to get mains power to a DWM312, you can use that device for the DWM312. That's the DPE-301GS. Okay. That is, there's no further questions coming through. We will wrap up today's session. David, a very good day to you. Thanks very much for an illuminating session today. Thanks everybody that's joined us today. It's been excellent to have your attention and your participation in today's webinar, and we look forward to joining you very soon as we put together another in this technical workshop session. It is a very good day from all of us here at D-Link. Goodbye.